So this is the effect we'll be making today. It's a lightning bolt, kind of toon style, kind of anime style, a very clean lightning bolt. It will have some simple textures and other stuff, but let's get right into it. You can also get this much more advanced lightning bolt if you subscribe to my Patreon in the second tier. It has some pretty advanced shaders and some much nicer textures and stuff. So if you want, go and check that out, and let's get right into the video. So the first thing we're gonna need is two textures, and we'll make these textures using Photoshop. It will be easier for you if you use Photoshop as well, but if you don't own Photoshop, you can use any image editing software and try to replicate what I'm doing. You won't have the same tools, but I'm sure you can follow along anyways. So start by making a new file that's 1000 by 2000 pixels. Make the background black, add another layer, and then we're going to use this tool right here, and we're going to do like this zigzaggy pattern as you see me doing. Remember to start and end in roughly the same spot on the top and the bottom, so the texture will tile perfectly or near perfectly, so you don't get any ugly seams or such things. So right click and you want to make a line from this shape we've done here, and then you make sure that you have simulate pressure off, and as well as you have a pretty small brush size with a high hardness. Then double click your layer, add an effect, and we want to add some outer glow with a pretty large spread as well as a kind of low opacity like 80% or something, and we're pretty much done with that. And just export this texture into your Unity project. Then make a new file that's 1000 by 1000. Make the background black, make a new layer on top of that. Make sure your brush is white. Make a little dot in the middle first. Then pick the tool, and we're going to start by making some cracks in the ground. So what we're going to do is like zigzag, like small lightning bolts, back and forth. Just follow kind of what I'm doing here. Make sure you go back in some kind of the similar shape as you went out, and then go back in with similar shape. And just go around the dot, doing like this all the way around. Make some variation and so on. And we have gotten the whole way around. We want to right click and fill that in. After that, you want to take your eraser, make it kind of rough with a kind of low opacity, and just go out and erase the corners like you see me doing here. Just a bit at random, don't do it perfectly, just do it a bit random so it looks kind of scuffed but still not. Then select a bigger, softer brush with an even lower opacity and just click around a bit like this. Make sure you don't click in the middle of anything, but in the corners, in the creases. Yes, it will give a much nicer effect later. Then select your brush and turn it up very much so it gets really big, and make it really soft, and then just click once in the middle and export it into your Unity project. Okay guys, so let's get right into it. Start by making a new folder called Lightning. Make a new folder inside of that, call it Mattes. And another one, call it Shaders. And a third one, and we're gonna call that Textures. And let's drag in our two textures we made earlier into the textures folders. We're gonna start by making two shaders here. So make an unlit graph, call it Glow, and make another shader, another unlit shader graph, and call it Lightning Bolt. I'm gonna start by making the glow shader here. It's gonna be a very simple shader. So let's start by adding a 2D texture and a color. Make the color HDR, make it white, increase the intensity, make sure the opacity is full, drag these two out here. Then we're gonna start by drag this out, search for sample, 2D sample, drag out the R into a multiply node, drag it into the B, and drag the color into the A here, and then drag this out to a multiply node as well. Drag the B out into a vertex node, move this a bit back so we get some more space, drag it into a split, drag the A into the alpha, and then the out into the color. Also, let's add a transparent to that. So that's pretty much it. You can add two-sided to it if you want. It's not necessary. I'm not gonna do it. Then save this, open up the lightning. This is going to be a bit more advanced shader, so try to keep up.
I'm fast as fuck, boy.
I'm going to start by adding a 2D texture. Here we can actually add our lightning texture, drag it in here. Do the same thing, drag it into a sampler here. This is the wrong one. Sample 2D, just like that. Drag the R into a step node, into the step in. The X value here will control the strength of the lightning, how thick it is. Then drag the out into a multiply node. To multiply B, and then drag this into a split, drag the A into alpha, and drag the out into color. I'm gonna make this transparent as well, just like that. And what we're gonna do now is gonna take this, we can remove this. I'm gonna take this A here and drag it out to a new multiply. And then go to the plus here and add a color, set the color to white, set opacity to full, and set the HDR and increase it to like 6. Drag it into the A, drag out the B and the vertex color. What the vertex color does is lets you control the color of the texture in the particle system. And then we wanna tile this texture here. So we're gonna start by adding a UV, then right click in adding a time node, take the time, drag it out into a multiply A, then press the plus, a vector 2, call it speed, set the Y value to 2, drag it out here, drag it into the B, and then drag this into a tiling and offset, and drag the UV into the UV, and drag the out into the UV. That was a lot of UV, but so what we're doing now is we are tiling this by the speed of 2 in the Y. What we want to do now is we want to be able to control this value here, the thickness of the bolt, from the particle system. So drag this out here into a split. I'm going to drag it into the remove that, drag it into the split R and drag this into a UV and set the UV to UV1. And that's pretty much it for the lightning bolt. So save that, close that down, and then we're gonna right click, create empty, rename it to lightning. We're gonna start by making the anticipation of the lightning bolt. So make a particle system, rename it to flare, not with 2 R's but whatever. Also we're gonna create 2 materials here, one that's called flare, drag the glow into that, as well as a material called lightning bolt, and drag the lightning bolt shader into that, and then drag the flare onto this. Then if we go down here we can select a texture. We're gonna use the default particle texture. Also you would want values here to 0 so we can actually see our particle system. Move it up a bit if you want to, so it's easier to see. And then we're gonna set the lifetime to 1, the speed to 0, the start size to 6, and then we will choose our color here. I'm gonna go for a bright blue. On the emission, remove the rate over time, press the plus and set the count to 1. This is a burst, so it will spawn 1 particle at a time. Then turn off the shape, and let's open the color over lifetime. And you can click this alpha here, just drag it down to 0. So this means it will fade out slowly. And then open up the size of lifetime, check that box. We're gonna do a zigzaggy shape here. something like this. I'm also going to increase the intensity by 2, just like that. And then let's right click here and add another effect, new particle system. Rename this to bolt. This will be the lightning bolt. So we can take our lightning bolt material and drag it onto this. Just like that. And this is gonna have some delay, 0.2 and the lifetime of 1. We're gonna have a start speed of 0. 3D start, we're gonna have check the box for 3D start size, and we're gonna have the X value is going to be 2, the Y value is going to be 20. And you can turn off the shape, and on the emissions set the rate to 0 and set the burst to 1. Then we can go down here to render, set the pivot of the Y to 0.5 because we want the pivot to be in the bottom, so the whole lightning bolt is above the ground. And then we're going to set the render alignment to local, switch the render mode to a mesh. The mesh we're going to use is the quad, the default quad, or you can make your own quad if you want to, doesn't really matter. And then scroll down here and you see custom vertex streams, check that box, press the plus, go to UV, add the UV2 as well as the custom 1x, and then go here to custom data, check that box, open it up, click on the vector, set the number of components to 1, and then make a curve here, and we want to make this curve look something like this. To add a new key, just right click and add key, make it look something like this. So as you see here, if we play back this, the lightning bolt gets fatter the higher this value here is, and if you lower it down like this, it will get really thin. So I would leave it somewhere in the middle there. And after that we want to change the size of our lifetime. So find the size of our lifetime, check that, check the 3D. On the Y, use the first preset. This means it will have a constant size all the way through. And on the X here, set the value here to 2. And then we're gonna make something that looks kind of like this, with a quite steep curve here, like that. If you pause it and you see how this works, so the size will go up and get really fat as well as really bright, and then scale down and disappear. What we could do, it's kind of, the light is kind of way too strong, so going here down here to HDR and lower this to like 4. Yeah, that looks way better. As well as you can go into your flare here and copy the color and paste it here. So now we've got a blue, and it's looking really nice. So if we select both of these and play them together here, you're gonna see the little ball of light here is way too far down. So if you restart this lightning bolt and pause it, you can select the flare and move it up to the top of the lightning bolt. So now we're gonna start to do the impact effect. We have the anticipation, the lightning bolt, and now we want the lightning bolt to strike the ground with a powerful effect. So start by creating a new particle system, rename it to, I'm going to just rename it to par for particles, and set the lifetime to 0.2, I mean the delay to 0.2 and the lifetime to something like 0.5, 0.4, somewhere around there. And then we're gonna set the speed random between two constants, and it's gonna be a value of 50 and a value of 80. Start size 1 is perfectly fine. You can paste the color here. If you need to go get it again. And then if we go down here to the emission, we want to remove the rate over time. Press the plus here. 30 is fine. And we're gonna change the shape to a circle. And also scroll down here to render on billboard. Go to stretch billboard. We also wanna select the flare here and drag it onto the particle system. So now it should light up. Also we want to rotate this 90 degrees so it's flat to the ground, just like that. And if we play this effect, it's starting to come together pretty nicely, I would say. The only thing we need to add to these particles is a fade, so going to color of lifetime and make the alpha 0 at the end. So now that's done. We want to add a scorch mark to the ground when the effect hits. So add a new particle system, rename this to something like scorched. We want to select the flare here and Control D and rename it to scorched and drag it on here. Set the delay to 0.2, lifetime to 1, start size to something like 8 or 9, 8.5, something like that. The start speed is supposed to be 0. Emission, we want to have a burst of 1 particle. The shape is going to be removed. And on render here we want a horizontal billboard, so it's flat to the ground here. And we're also going to change the texture to the cracks. Just like that. So these cracks are going to be very bright. They're going to have the same color, so you can paste the color here again. And now we have our small cracks right there. We are also going to add a fade to these. Do the same thing as all the other times. And we're also going to add a size over lifetime. Set that to 2. Drag it so it's really aggressive. And now we're going to Control D this. Scroll down here to render, and we want the rendering layer to be -1. So it's underneath the other one, and just set this to black. Instead, also set the lifetime to something like 2. So now the cracks will turn black and then fade away. Last thing we need is a big flare, so Control D the flare. Go down here, set the delay to 0.2, as well as we can set the Y to 0 and increase this size like crazy, something like this. On the size of our lifetime, we want select this pre-made curve here and just drag it up like this. It does, and then set the lifetime to something low like 0.2, so it just flashes for a second then disappears. And there we have it, people. Our lightning strike is finished. If you want to change the color of it, you can select the flare, everything except the scorch in the parentheses. If you select all of these things, you can change the color however you want this. Pause it, we can see the color change in live time. It's really cool, but I hope you liked this video and enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe and comment anything you want if you want me to make another effect, or if you have a suggestion of effect you want to see me make, and have a great day.